What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dolphins Daily, your daily dose of Dolphins content with your boy, Chris Kane. Let's talk about the Dolphins. If I need to describe this offseason for the Dolphins, it's really fork in the road, make or break kind of situation. And what they seem to be trying to figure out is what style of play is going to help us get over the hump. That's the biggest part, right? Most teams in the league are built around their stars. A couple teams are built just like with grit or toughness, and some teams are built with finesse. So there are some overarching philosophies, but most of the time, players win. If you don't have a top 10 quarterback, you don't go far in the playoffs. Pretty much that simple. You can go far with a man defense. You can go far, with man coaching sometimes. You got to have a trigger guy generally. But even the good teams don't always need a great game from their quarterback to win. We've seen that happen. And so the question is for the Dolphins, we built our team to be very good in the skill positions, and we haven't really fortified the rest of the team. And the question is, do we build the team and move generally in the direction of let's make our stars be stars, or do we try to fortify the rest of the team? In this case, having multiple ways to win, because we have two of the fastest receivers in the league and a quarterback who can get the ball to them. Every team we play knows that. So every team we play is trying to stop that. Well, we get that. That's every team in the league. You don't play Cincinnati and not know Jamar Chase is going to get open. You don't think that T. Higgins won't get open. We know that. When you play Derrick Henry, he's going to get the ball and he's going to run some people over. And the stiff arm, probably on his way. For the Dolphins, because we're so speed dependent and our routes are so far down the field, yes, in the one on one, our receivers should cook. We know that. But most teams are playing versions of bracket coverages. They're kind of playing deep safeties. And so what that does is put a lid on what the Dolphins can do in terms of big plays. Because you can't throw a 40-yard pass if a safety is 45 yards behind the ball, right? What has happened in the past is that when either of our receivers goes out, Tyreek or Jalen, then the offense kind of goes boom because we built them both to be on opposite sides and be super fast and like exploit the defense. What I think we should be trying to move toward is not don't be dependent on the stars. I don't think that's how any team is built. But being able to work off of that. I like the idea of Tyreek and Jalen being decoys sometimes more than them getting the ball. If you know Tyreek's going to run through the defense and take up at least two guys, sometimes three, we've seen the film. When Tyreek lowers his head and starts sprinting, dudes get on that horse and they go deep. They're like, I'm not finna give up a 70-yard bomb. But if he's running and three guys are guarding him, somebody open somewhere. And it's probably not Jalen Waddle. Could be a tight end, could be a back out of the backfield, could be a third receiver like Malik Washington, anybody. Somebody is open. And yes, sometimes that might make Tyreek upset because he wants the ball. I get that. But the idea that he's such a threat, that's why the RPO is so dangerous when you have a really good running quarterback, because just the threat that they might pull it makes the running back go. Derrick Henry talked about it last year. He's like, listen, I've been Derrick Henry for a long time, but that's Lamar Jackson. When he puts that ball in my stomach and you think he might pull it, you're gonna freeze a little bit because if you say I'm gonna crash down on me, he gone. And so now Derrick has a little bit more running lanes because you scared of him. If you think Tyreek, even against deep safety coverage, is about to take the top off, if you think Jalen Waddle is riding down the field, and if you take a bad angle, that could be a deep bomb, other stuff opens up. I think what's happened is that we've been so reliant on those two to be great, meaning their stats to be great, that we haven't built enough off of those two. And also, our running game should be better because we have so many people playing deep in the secondary. Like if they have at least dime coverage or nickel coverage in the secondary, that means there's less big guys up front to defend the run. That's just the math. They only have 11 guys on defense. If they play a nickel defense, they have 5 DBs. Dime, they have 6 DBs. That means they have 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 DBs. We should be mashing. But our running backs outside of Devon Achan aren't like our strong point of our team in terms of star power, but that might be a better way to play it. So I think sometimes you want the star, you want Jamar to get 10 catches, you want Justin Jefferson to get 10, 12 catches. We want Tyreek to get 2,000 yards, whatever. There are times and places where you got to feed those guys enough that they feel like they're part of the game. We've all seen receivers just go in and they go in the tank. If you don't throw a receiver the ball for 2, maybe 3 possessions in a row, you might lose them. Like Julio Jones is a rare exception where Julio would have like 3 catches in some games. He's like, all right, but doesn't mean he didn't feel in no kind of way. He just didn't say anything. Our receivers, if they're not getting the ball, you're gonna lose them for the game. So you do got to give them those bubble screens, those quick slants, those like clear out routes, put them in motion. You got to do something sometimes to make them be fed. But the idea that we have these two ultimate weapons that we think could pressure the defense in a number of different ways, and we can build more plays off of that. I think that might be a better solution going forward in terms of being more complete because we've seen what happens when we just say, hey, y'all two got to win the game at receiver. It hasn't worked out the way that we would like it to. So I do think the solution is really a mix of both. Got to feed the big time receivers, but also they should allow other people to eat. Like if their plays get too full, people gonna try to double, and when they get double, number two, number three receiver, you got to eat. Running backs, at some point, you might meet a linebacker in the hole. You got to break a tackle. If it's you one on one with a linebacker, yeah, they'll make the tackle sometimes, but if you break that one tackle and they have 5 or 6 DBs, that's a 12, 15, 20 yard carry. And then at some point, they got to bring that extra defender down, and then that passing game should hit them again. That's how you hit them. If we're not running the ball, like teams were playing deep coverage, and then we were getting 3 to 4 yards of carry. So they said, well, why we change our defensive scheme? You're not killing us with the run. We have extra protection in the pass game. We cool. We saw the Super Bowl where Philadelphia just basically said our front four is better than y'all, and they could play whatever coverage on the back end. They were like, we might send a blitz, we may not. They went most of the game without even having a blitz. They just said our dudes are better than you, and because they were, they had guys all over the field in the flat, in the secondary, like deep thirds. Like you saw Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, was like, where am I going with the ball? Because I don't have time to throw, and they're only rushing four. So I'm throwing him to 3 to 4 receivers against 7 guys deep. That doesn't add up math wise, which is why they couldn't move the ball and they couldn't score. But you have to punish defenses like that because otherwise they'll just do it all game. So I do think the Dolphins have some things to maybe incorporate in the system. And again, I trust coach to do such a thing. I do think when he got there initially, we got Tyreek. He was this great tool, this weapon, the fastest guy in the league. We had to get him Jalen Waddle, number 1 pick. We got to give him the ball, and it became like got to be the fastest show on turf, 2.0 kind of thing. And yes, that is part of the offense, and yes, we do need big plays and all that. But there's a lot more we can build off of that because we have those guys, and hopefully, we can start doing it this year. Anytime there's a big trade involving us and another team, especially teams that we don't normally like play and have like a rivalry against or whatever, people who that used to play for that team or who cover the team jump out and give their opinion on it. Not always a negative thing. Sometimes they give more insight because I'll be honest, I don't keep up with Pittsburgh news. Don't know what the Steelers are doing outside of the big stuff, outside of Mike Tomlin giving some press conference and then like walking off. um, like even trading their top receiver, like that was news for like 2 days, and he went to the Cowboys, and I was still like, all right, cool, he gone. Like it wasn't a big deal. So I don't know the ins and outs of Pittsburgh. I know Ben Roethlisberger's been doing a radio show up there for a long time, and obviously he's plugged into it. 2-time champ, second best quarterback in their history, one of the better quarterbacks in my lifetime. Still kind of underrated because he played with like real goats, unfortunately for him. But he still got 2 Super Bowls, so whatever. Ben's unimpeachable. So Ben gave his comments on the Minka Fitzpatrick trade in it. And this is interesting. I didn't know any of this stuff until right now. He said, I know that there had been some kind of talks in the last year, maybe call it 2 years, that just maybe lack of production. People talked about lack of interceptions, the lack of splash, the big play wasn't there for Minka the last year or two. And so it kind of felt like, okay, they weren't real like maybe happy with it. But I didn't think that it got to this point, right? That's interesting to me because we don't get Minka Fitzpatrick news in Pittsburgh. Like we weren't getting that news. I didn't realize that there had been some probably internal conversations that hey, Minka's not really doing what we want him to be doing. We got you from Miami to be not Troy Polamalu, who's in the Hall of Fame, but to not be that much worse. Like we he wasn't all pro, so we got you to be the all pro, perennial Pro Bowler, difference maker in the secondary. And early on, he was just that because he was an all pro. He was great. And then when it tapered off, it was like, hey man, we didn't get what we paid for, essentially, and that makes sense to me. Now I'm watching the games as a football fan. I'm like, oh yeah, Minka, 2 3 years ago killed the game, and now I was like, he's still good, but maybe out of position, maybe injured, whatever. So they were having these conversations. Then it makes more sense as to why they were even looking at Jalen Ramsey, because Jalen Ramsey, although he didn't get a ton of picks for us last year, in his career, Jalen gets picks. He is a ball hawk. He's always near it. He's a physical DB. He'll punch the ball out, and also he's kind of an attitude guy. Like Jalen brings some energy to it. Makes total sense to me. Um, I would also say that Jalen's best years are probably behind him, but the NFL is more cornerback driven and safety driven at this point. So if I'm going to trade my unhappy safety for a really good corner, that makes sense for Pittsburgh. I think Minka is currently better at his position and Jalen Ramsey is better at his position, but that's also because there's less good safeties. So you can kind of like parse it how you want. And I like Jalen Ramsey a lot since Florida State till now. Big fan. But I was a Minka fan in Alabama to now too. So I am a fan of both of these guys individually. I will still root for Jalen even in Pittsburgh. I have no reason not to. But I get where that's coming from. And if there were rumblings like this for the last couple years, then yeah, this because to me this trade came out of nowhere. I'm like, Minka's getting traded. Like I thought it was blasphemy. But in his market, if he's hearing a lot of people being like, yo, man, 29, I don't know, could be washed. I don't know if he got it. That's what they've been talking about. Then the question that people have for Pittsburgh is, what is Pittsburgh doing? Why are you making these moves on defense? Why are you trading Minka Fitzpatrick? It's because we didn't want him. Like, obviously, hey, he wasn't producing. We were trying to get rid of him. Like, oh, okay. I didn't know y'all felt that way, but when Minka left us, he was unhappy with what the organization was doing. We had just gotten blown out, and he was like, yo, I don't think y'all going in the right direction. Totally cool. We got good compensation back for it. But that made sense. I don't if Ben says anything more, I would love to hear about it. But that was that just kind of popped up out of nowhere. All right, so we're getting back to our top 25 in the last 25 list. And number 21 is Jeremiah Bell. Now, is Jeremiah Bell a better player than Dominican Sue? No, of course not. Dominican Sue is borderline Hall of Fame. What Jeremiah Bell was is I think what the Dolphins are trying to do now. He's like the ultimate success story for the Dolphins. He's a 6 round pick that plays special teams, that didn't earn playing time, that became a starter, that became a Pro Bowler. That is like, as an organization goes, you're like, hey, we pick up this kid in the 6th round. You know, he's got good intangibles. Probably throw him on, punt return, kickoff, whatever team. And then you become like the fourth or fifth corner. So when a team is, going 4 wide or somebody gets hurt, you kind of get some burn. And then for you to do that and then start 75 games over an 8 year run, and then to actually make a Pro Bowl as a 6th round pick, dude, that is beautiful. The GM feels like crushed it. See, I knew he could always be great. There's a video that came out about, I want to say it was Cooper Cup, like years ago with the Rams, where the Rams were like, "Yo, man, I think Cooper Cup's going to be great," and people were like, "What?" And they drafted him, and then he became like, Triple Crown winner, All Pro, Super Bowl champ, and it was like, "Yeah, we got it." Like that's got to be a great feeling for a GM where you see something in a player, and then they live up to it. Now he was outside the Pro Bowl year, he was just a consistent starter. It was never like, Javon Holland level. He wasn't Minka Fitzpatrick level, but he was just really solid, which is kind of what we want now. We drafted a bunch of people. We have a lot of guys on 1 year deals who can come in there and do the job, be solid, upside, probably maybe be a low level option to be a Pro Bowler, but like it's unlikely they'll be a Pro Bowler, but just do the job well. That you're not a liability. Sometimes just not being a liability is a win. That's the thing. We don't. Not everybody's gonna be a star. It's like how many safeties can you name for real? Like if you're like a real football aficionado, you'd be like, all right, maybe 5 to 8 before you kind of stop. Like it's not a ton of like elite safeties, but if you do the job where hey, you're not a liability, that's great. And for a 6 round pick, and listen, Jeremiah was well liked on the team. The only thing he didn't do well was when he left us, he went to the Jets, and we not here for the Jets. But he was only there for a year, then he retired. So I felt like the Jets kind of ended his career early. That may not be accurate, but that's just what I'm telling myself. Don't go to the Jets, even though we got Ashton Davis from the Jets. So whatever, maybe that's our trade, a decade later. But yeah, Jeremiah was just a consistently good Dolphins player. That's the best way I can describe it. Wasn't Dominican Sue like at his highest a better player? Sure. Short-lived career, 8 years. You get a little bit more love on our list. So shout out to Jeremiah. Finally, we're gonna do a singular comment because this comment has a bunch of weight to it. I didn't realize this today, but I was scrolling around and I saw that the Dolphins are the only team in the four major sports that hasn't won a playoff game in the last 25 years, and that stunned me. Like across baseball, hockey, football, and basketball, they're the only team that hasn't won a playoff game, and that was like what? Because there are some terrible baseball teams, like the Athletics are terrible. The Marlins have been bad recently in some. Well, they're good this year, but they were not good a couple years ago. But the Marlins, we know they have two World Series. We know that's not a team. But there's been a lot of teams that have just sold. We've seen them just not trying to win, absolute tanking, but they will still win a playoff game at some point. We saw the Browns win one with Baker Mayfield. Like, there's been plenty of bad teams that have just broken through once. Hey, one little flash in the pan. The Dolphins have been solid to good in a number of years, and then middling in other years. We haven't had that 2-14 season. We're not that level team, but for some reason, of all the teams, the Dolphins have not won a playoff game. So, like, how do we feel about that? Obviously, that is a very negative distinction. Now, to be fair, just a few years ago, the Florida Panthers had never won a playoff game. Right? They had gotten to the playoffs and just got smoked up out of here. Um, and then all of a sudden, they got great, right? Well, they hadn't won a finals game, a final match game. I'm saying match, whatever. Florida had gotten to the final and then gotten housed. And then they made, 3 runs in a row. So you can turn your fortunes around in an instant if you get on the right path. And the Dolphins have been right there. Had plenty of chances to win. We lost some heartbreakers. Sometimes it was bad matchups. Sometimes our starting quarterback wasn't there. There are a number of reasons why you don't win, but that's a long time to not have like one breakthrough. That's the problem. Like you would think, all right, maybe like 04, but then to be fair, us not winning coincided with the whole Tom Brady career. Tom Brady's winning started what in 2000 or 2001 and then ended like in 2020. So there's a lot of years in there where you knew you weren't winning the division outside of '08 because Tom Brady was there. That we got to get some kind of Tom Brady reprieve. Now the naysayers are saying, "Hey, what about the Jets who made 2 runs to the AFC Championship game in the same division?" Hey, I see that. I see that. Okay, good point. I don't care what you think. What about the Buffalo Bills? Hey, guess what? I don't care. All right. Maybe that wasn't a good point of mine. I was trying to get some bail for the team. We had 20 years of Brady getting dubs. I thought that was enough to keep it at bay. But to be fair, yes, every other team in the division also won at some point. Not great. And Buffalo would have won more had not the Tennessee miracle not happening with Frank Wycheck and all that. Like they would have. Who knows how far Buffalo would have gone in that playoff run? Tennessee went to the championship game that year. I gotten off topic. The bottom line is this level of not winning is rare. I don't know what a team. I mean, even like a team like the Cubs had won series before. That's why they were mad at Moises Alou and Bartman and all those guys. Like they at least had one. They just hadn't won like a championship. To not win a singular playoff game is really rough. We've had decent quarterbacks. We've had good quarterbacks for a run. We haven't had anybody at Dan Marino's level, so that's definitely part of it. But sometimes we just haven't put it all together. I thought 2 years ago was really like a good year. I thought we had a really good chance. I think we should have won the division. That's really where, and I always go back to that Tennessee game because it was just heartbreaking. That had we just beat the Tennessee Monday night game, the Buffalo game the following week would not have even mattered. We would have had a home playoff game, 4-5 matchup, maybe 3-6, depending on how things would have gone, and that would have been the time. But instead, go all the way down, end up playing an awful playoff game, and it's like the whole season just kind of like imploded because you couldn't beat the Tennessee Titans. Awful. Will Levis, fine. I'm mad. Like Will Levis got a dub and a comeback dub at that. Absurd. absurd. So I do think hopefully the urgency is really popping for the team. Like I know hearing the stat, it's like those like the Cowboys haven't been to the Super Bowl since what '96 that is. And Jerry Jones like, hey, this is our year. How about them Cowboys? It's like, yeah, dog, it's been almost 30 years. Like, but they've won playoff games. They just haven't been the Cowboys in 30 years. I feel like that, but Dolphin fans aren't like this. We aren't Cowboy fans. We aren't as boisterous and insufferable as they are. But I do think you gotta get the monkey off your back at some point, man. Because otherwise, you start doing if it's not 25, it might be 30, and I don't know. I feel like this year is really going to put a lot of people to the fire. Coaching, upper management, quarterbacks, star players. If they all come together, we can win a playoff game. Do I think we could beat the Chiefs in Kansas City in 20-degree weather? Probably not. But don't put yourself in that position. Just don't do that. You got to win some games. You got to beat a couple good playoff teams. Put yourself in a position where you're playing a team like, I don't know, Jacksonville in the first round. Maybe a team like, Houston, who's actually a surprisingly good playoff team with CJ Stroud. But playing them either in Miami or in Houston in the dome, like, give yourself a chance where the elements aren't an issue. And if you can avoid Mahomes, then I would avoid Mahomes. And obviously, we try to avoid Josh Allen whenever we play him. But just, it starts with game one, and it ends with game 17. And then we hope that we get a good seeding and we do something with it. But that is a dubious stat that nobody's happy about. So there you go. But as always, guys, thank you for tuning in to Dolphins Daily. We appreciate the love and support. Thank y'all for the likes and subscribes. We'll see you next time on Dolphins Daily. Peace.